Hello, everyone, and welcome to the broadcast. I'm Ash, and with me is just one of our beautiful co hosts, Tammy, because Suze has been a super mom, burning the candles at both ends, and she's not feeling well. Hey, Tammy, how are ya?
I am excellent.
Oh, snap. You took the excellent.
I'm not competing with anybody today, and relaxed.
Oh, yes. Why are you so relaxed?
Because I just had a massage.
Sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
How are
I
you?
actually didn't think of a word. I'm feeling sunny.
Oh, I love this.
I had a beautiful day outside yesterday with so much sunshine. It was beautiful until the chemtrails rolled in, and now I see that there's a supercell like weather
Dun, dun,
warning coming
dun.
for Tuesday, and it has been nonstop chemtrails since then. But anyways, I did get one full day of sun, and it felt glorious.
I got a lot of sun yesterday too. My face looks like a tomato. I fell asleep in my hammock listening to Tibetan monk chants.
That's awesome. Also with us are the Rods, Dave and Noah. How are you guys?
You first.
First.
Okay, fine. In honor of Suze, I'm excellente.
Hey, Noah, how are you?
Okay, I didn't realize Dave was done. I'm good. I'm feeling collected.
Collected?
I don't know if that's a word I can use for this, but I just feel good. I feel like I got all my, ducks in a row currently, I think, maybe.
Nice. That's good. That's
Not
a good
very
feeling.
confident in that answer. Anyway.
Take it till you make it, right?
Yeah.
Well, I've been wanting to have our guest quite some time now. He's a fellow podcaster. I've gotten to know him over on X. He has been on the Big Puff podcast. He's had Dave on his podcast, and he is super knowledgeable in a wide variety of tinfoily topics. And I can't wait for our audience to hear all that he has to share with us. Welcome, Dan.
Hey, good evening, ladies. Thanks for having me on. It's great to be here, and I'm really stoked for a good conversation here.
Absolutely. So this is
Welcome, Dan.
Fournier. Dan, why don't you tell our audience what you're all about, what your podcast is like? If you want to get into kind of how you got into the podcasting scene, that would be awesome. Just kind of give us a little bit of the down low on what you're about.
Okay, I'll try to keep it short. So basically, I'm originally from Quebec. I'm a long-time educator. I worked in the education sector for about 36 years, 22 as a teacher. I taught here in Quebec in the college system, the CEGEP. So I taught computer science, I taught business, and in 2008, I pretty much dropped everything and I moved to China. In southern China, in a big city called Shenzhen. It's across the border from Hong Kong. So I lived and worked there for 13 years until late 2021. Then I came back here. Of course, I married. I have a Chinese wife, and we have a son. Beautiful mixed blood son. And when we moved back to Canada, I came back a few times when I was in China, but when I came back to Canada in late 2021, I almost kind of got a reverse culture shock because I really didn't recognize in my country anymore. This was, of course, during COVID, and I was just returning to my city, and there was even concern that we couldn't even come back because I had chosen not to get vaccinated and all that. But anyway, it was okay to come back. We had to quarantine for a couple of weeks, and then we were quarantined in Toronto. So then we made our way back in Quebec. We took the train, but this is just a month before they banned people from taking the train if they were not
Wow.
vaxxed, right?
You just
So,
snuck in.
and then, you know, I get here, and you basically almost need a vaccine passport to go anywhere, like even at a restaurant. Went to one of my favorite kind of burger joints restaurant. Oh, you cannot eat here. So I had to, you know, we had to eat outside in the car like a bunch of animals. And then I said, like, I was thinking of getting back into maybe teaching back at my old college, but that really didn't pan out. And then I said, like, well, I have to find out what the heck happened to this country. So I decided to have a vocation change, a career change, and decided to become an independent investigative journalist. To try to find out what the heck happened here in this divided, messed up country, which is totally alien from the one I left. So I've been doing that. I've been basically writing. I tend to write pretty long articles, and I published them on my Substack. And a little over a year ago, I started my podcast also. So, like you mentioned, I had Dave on a few weeks ago. That was a lot of fun. I've had some interesting guests so far. I had Sean Stone, you know, who's the son of famous movie director Oliver Stone.
No way.
I've had a first generation Holocaust survivor, Vera Sharav. She was probably close to 90 years old when I interviewed her, but very, very sharp and very interesting woman. I had some other very interesting guests too. So, so that's pretty much what occupies my time. And of course, you know, like, I guess what we're going to talk about, we're going to kind of dive into a little bit of the kind of the secret history of the, you know, ancient knowledge, things like that, because I know you girls are interested in that. And Dave is also interested in that. So, so I prepared kind of like a 4-stage little presentation about, you know, how things can kind of like progress towards one another. And what I'll do is I'll start with like, because the way that the ancients shared, you know, their knowledge, was through various means. You know, it could have been through artifacts, it could have been through art or architecture and things like that. So I'll begin with a few examples, and then I'll progress in the 4th stage, how it leads, believe it or not, to the tarot. And so I think it should be interesting because, you know, this is something I researched extensively when I was in China, and I haven't really shared it with anyone yet.
I know.
So
I'm
you
so
guys will
excited,
be
yeah.
you guys will be the ones that I'm going to share this with, and you know, I'm very happy that's going to be with you.
Nice.
That's fantastic.
Awesome.
So Dan and I hopped on to this platform yesterday just to make sure everything was working properly and whatnot. And we got talking about chemtrails and geoengineering, and I'm like, oh darn, we're gonna have to have him on multiple times because you were just a wealth of knowledge, and we could definitely go on forever. So so I'm really excited to talk about all of the hidden ancient history and all that kind of stuff. But I think we'll definitely have to have you come back on to kind of fill us in on some other stuff as well in the future.
Sure, I'd love to.
Yeah. So how maybe you can kind of lead the way on you know, kind of like what you've explored.
Okay. Yeah, sure. I can I can go through this, you know, step by step. I do tend to talk a lot, and you know, I prepared some notes, so I apologize in advance if it if it sounds like reading a little bit, but I like to pack, you know, few words with a lot of meaning. So that's what I like to do. So don't
That's
read
great. Let's go.
don't read my articles that are 6,000 words on Substack, because they'll drive you insane. All right, so ladies, are you ready to receive your multiple mind orgasms?
Yes.
Whoa.
I am.
All right. So great. Let's get the ball rolling. Pardon the pun. All right. Okay. So in Greek mythology, there's this figure named Dionysus. I'm sure maybe you've heard of him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In
Yes.
Roman, they call him Bacchus.
Yep. The
Right.
Bacchanal.
So
Mm-hmm.
he's revered as the god of winemaking, fruit, vegetation, fertility, religious ecstasy, and theater. Okay, he's often depicted not just holding a bunch of grapes and a chalice, but often with a staff. A staff like a long stick, right? So let me share an image here, and hopefully this will work fine. Allow. Give me a second here. Single window, image viewer, share. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Sure do.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Okay, I'm going to switch to like the other page where I have my notes so I don't get too lost. If something messes up with the image, just let me know. So
Sounds good.
So I referred to this staff. Okay, so in Greek mythology, this staff is called a thyrsus. That's Thyrsus, a thyrsus. So it's basically a staff entwined by ivy vines and topped by a pine cone. You could see it on screen there, right? On the top, we have the pine cone. So it's carried by Dionysus. So this staff, it can go by several names, such as the Wand of Hermes or the Staff of Osiris. And there's a varied version called I don't know if the pronunciation is correct here, but the Caduceus or Staff of Asclepius. Asclepius was the god of medicine, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's often seen with intertwined snakes instead of the vines, and it's recognized as a universal symbol of medicine. So I'm sure you've seen the one I'm referring to, right?
Yes.
Okay. So there's different parts of the thyrsus, and they represent different things. And the sacred object, because we can consider the whole thing a sacred object, right, is considered to hold elusive and mystical powers. And you can also think of Moses, right? Moses carried a staff, and if you all watch the Ten Commandments, right? So in basically a staff does have that kind of connotation to begin with as well, right? So we can ask ourselves, well, what are these forces and what can come of them? Okay, so this sacred object is considered to hold elusive and mystical powers, right, or forces. So, like in line with Greek mythology, the shaft of the thyrsus is a hollow stalk of a flowering plant in which Prometheus carried fire down to illuminate mankind. So here the fire would represent light or the divine spark or spirit we each hold within us. And at the tip of the thyrsus, we find a pine cone, which is indicative of our pineal gland. Okay, so due to its similar shape and resemblance, I'm sure you're all familiar with the pineal gland, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. That's why we have fluoride in the water, right? Because they want to calcify it.
Right.
So anyway,
just for our audience, like the pineal gland is this very sort of ancient part of our brain that maybe isn't used as often anymore. It's kind of like a part of our instinctual part of our brain that doesn't get used very often. So it's kind of gotten a bit shriveled over time. But it's quite an important part of our brain that we're not using very, very much.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, right? So it's a gland, right, that sits atop of our spine at the base of the brain. And it's believed to be our spiritual center, right? Or as a French philosopher, René Descartes put it, the seat of the soul or the center of consciousness. Now, the intertwined vines or snakes along the staff, they represent the formation of our spine. So now it is it's a spiritual energy, right? They call it Kundalini in Indian esotericism, right? Or chi for the
Mhm.
Chinese. So that flows from the base of our spine all the way up to the top of our head. And there are 7 points along this path, which are referred to as the 7.
Chakras.
Chakra.
Very good. Okay, the 7 chakras. So the 6th chakra, do you know? Up is known as which chakra? Do you guys know?
The throat chakra.
No.
The 6th one.
So the crown chakra, right? The crown chakra or third eye. So most of you, I'm sure you've heard of the third eye, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's believed that every one of us, okay, can open this third eye by channeling the spiritual energy to increase, awareness and enlightenment. And we see this in the Eastern philosophy a lot too. So what is kind of noteworthy also is that in the book of Revelation, the last book of the Bible, there's a mention of the 7 seals. And some believe that each of these seals represents each of the chakras.
Mhm.
So though these 7 seals are represented as judgments, they are actually a succession for the elevation or evolution of human consciousness.
Oh, interesting.
And so they're actually meant to be unsealed or opened. So in order to achieve what people would call the state of pure bliss,
Enlightenment.
in the
Yeah.
East they'll call it nirvana, right? Or state of pure bliss,
Mhm.
peace, joy, happiness, knowledge, and love. So, or you could say divine wisdom or enlightenment is another way to put it. And so if I come back to this spiritual energy, we also know that another great civilization, the Maya, or at least their high priest, not only knew about this, but incorporated it into rituals, artifacts, and architecture. And it's interesting because at the end of last month, I was in Mexico, went to not just a little bit south of Cancun in the Yucatan Peninsula. I don't know if any of you been around that region or a place called Chichen Itza?
Yes.
I have.
Chichen Itza, I've been, yes.
No.
Have you visited the Kukulkan pyramid at Chichen Itza? It's basically the main
Yes.
pyramid there.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
Yes.
Okay. So and here's where I'm saying,
Sorry,
yeah,
if
go
I can
ahead.
interrupt. I think isn't Chichen Itza one of the ones that they're no longer allowed to go up into anymore, or is that
I don't know because
I can
I
answer that.
went. Yeah, go ahead.
You're allowed to climb. There's one further down in South America, I think in Guatemala, and you're allowed to climb one left in Mexico called Coba, which I climbed. What up? Funny story about
Nice.
that. It was however many steps going up it, and I was getting ready to kill it. And about like 1/3 of the way up, I'm breathing and panting, and there's like 11-year-olds just like smoking right by me, going right to the top of the pyramid. So just show how out of shape I was. But yeah, those two you're still allowed to climb. In Chichen Itza, something happened where they were like, "Sorry, you can't climb this anymore."
Yeah, I
which
think
probably isn't- it's
yeah,
not a bad
he's
thing,
right.
I think.
Yeah, because I think
Yeah.
too many people fell down. Because I went about 20 years ago. When I went this past month, I didn't go back to visit because I was with my young son and it was kind of far away. But I went about 20 years ago, and I did climb all the way up, and the stairs are fairly narrow. Don't look back down, but it's kind of tricky. And there was an ambulance at the bottom of the pyramid because I think a lot of people used to fall down. But anyway, but what's really interesting, and there's so much that's basically encoded in this pyramid. Okay, so what I'll do is I'm going to show an actual photo of the pyramid. Which proves that basically, like the ancient Maya, they knew about just exactly what I was talking about, the spiritual energy, these life forces. So let me just share a picture, and this is from a book I got when I was there. I think. Can I click on the next? Well, hold on. Let me do. Tell me if you see the pyramid.
Yeah. Oh,
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. All right. This is really, really fascinating. Okay. So notice at the bottom left base of the pyramid, it's not very clear, but it's a stone statue of a serpent.
The serpent, yes.
Yep.
I love this.
And in Mayan culture, the serpent symbolizes wisdom and energy, which
So just
yep.
if I can just interject, just
Sure.
for the audience, if you're trying to kind of find it, so it's the bottom left would be
Yep.
the head of the snake.
Yeah.
It's kind of like its mouth is open,
Yeah.
and then you can kind of it's just lit up. And I'm sure Dan will get into why it's lit up right now, but basically,
Yeah.
it looks like it's kind of just
Yeah, don't spoil it.
I won't. But just
yeah,
for anyone
it's that big object on the bottom left, right? Yep.
Yeah. And so just for anyone who's not actually, who can't see this if they're driving or what have you, basically you can see like there's a serpent head at the bottom, and then
Don't say
the
more.
body kind of.
Don't say more. I'll
Dan
describe
will
it.
tell you the rest. Yeah.
I'll describe it. Yeah. Okay. All right. So yeah, it's pretty cool actually. So like I said, in Mayan culture, the serpent symbolizes wisdom and energy, which in all of the manifestations are depicted by wave-like movement. So this photo was taken on March 21st, the day of the spring equinox.
Spring
Equinox, or I don't know how to pronounce it properly. Equinox, I think. And only on this day does this light shadow effect take place. So notice from the snake statue at the base of the pyramid, maybe the viewers, if they're in a car, they can't see it, but they can always refer back to the actual broadcast here. You have a wavy light ascending the pyramid all the way to the top. Can you see it?
Sure can.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is called the projection of the serpent of light. So it's equivalent to the previously mentioned chakras and energy flow, like from the base of the spine to the top of the head. Only here it's depicted from the base of the pyramid to its top. Pretty cool.
And the fact that they were able to build this into this pyramid, and know exactly how to, orient it so that it would
Yep.
show on the spring equinox
Yep.
is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like, if you think about the people who are voting today, and they even tie their shoes properly before they went to vote.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean there's so much more too, because there's 4 sides to the pyramids, and like on the different equinoxes, you can only see like 2 sides will be completely shadowed, right? And on the 2 solstices, it'll be the same thing. So for example, I think the summer solstice, right? I think is it the east side? I forget which sides, but there are 2 sides that are completely lit, right? And the other side are like shadowed. So it's like perfectly. So assuming you have like a sunny day and it's not all cloudy, right? So I mean these are just a couple examples of what they've incorporated in there. So anyway, we can leave it here on this, but just a quick note that the Maya were also aware of a concept called duality. So light and darkness, just like the Chinese with the yin yang. I'm sure you all seen the yin yang symbol, right? It's kind of like half black, half white, and it has the 2 little dots of the opposite, color, right?
Yep.
And they also had the serpent of darkness as opposed to like the serpent of light, like we see with this pyramid.
And this is something that I think that whatever the powers that be who are trying to kind of keep us all disconnected, it seems to me like they're trying to stop us from being from embracing our own dualism, right? We're supposed to be binary, or non-binary, but like we're not supposed to embrace, say, our masculine and feminine side of ourselves. We're supposed to pick something and only go with that, or we're supposed to embrace whatever race we are or whatever religion we are, and we're not supposed to kind of be a little more all-encompassing and have more nuance.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's why they put like fluoride in the water supply, right? And this has been happening obviously for decades. There was the famous movie producer. I can't remember in which film he mentioned this. The famous British film producer, the one who made Eyes Wide Shut and 2001: Space Odyssey.
Stanley Kubrick?
Kubrick, yeah.
Kubrick,
So
yeah.
he kind of joked about this. It was a black and white movie about. It had a long title about something about dropping the bomb, right? So anyway, he kind of gave a kind of a indirect warning in that film about the fluoride. So because like René Descartes said, right, it's like the seed of the soul, right? So they don't want people to be in touch with their kind of spiritual base, right? They don't know that they don't want people to know that there was a creator, and that's what I'm going to kind of like talk about, I guess, next. Because I can shift over to something called the flower of life, unless you guys want to make some other comments on any of what we just looked at.
Tammy, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I'm just listening.
All good?
Anyone?
All good.
Yeah.
All good. All right. Okay, so we can continue with. I'll switch images in a minute here. So how about you, both of you guys? I'm sure you've heard of the flower of life.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So for those maybe not familiar, so we refer to the flower of life as like basically sacred. Okay, so that means connected with God or the creator. That's what I mean by sacred. But it's basically a geometrical figure on account of it being considered a visual expression or record of all forms of life, including both their material and their ethereal. And what I mean by ethereal is like soul, spirit, life force, energy. So both their material and ethereal aspects. And this later one is very, very important. So in other words, a flower of life is considered a blueprint or template or model for all creations.
So would that kind of tie into the Akashic Records?
What's that?
Would that tie into the Akashic Records?
I'm not sure. I have heard of that Akashic Records. They're kind of like a big record of kind of
Basically,
like
it's like
humanity's misdeeds and all that. Is that what you're talking about, or?
It's
well, it's basically. Do you want to jump in, Tammy?
no, go ahead.
No, go for it.
It's basically like a cosmic library.
Yeah.
Library.
Mm-hmm.
Like an infinite database of the record of man, and I actually have a book on it, and you're supposed to be able to access it. I never have, but I know people that say that they have. It's very big, like among shamans and stuff like that. And it comes from the Sanskrit word of ether or spirit, or like sometimes I'm sure everybody's heard like the fifth element.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it could tie into the flower of life. But I haven't done enough research on the Akashic records and all that.
Sounds like a similar concept, but maybe like a smaller scale in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I may. The flower of life, it would contain the Fibonacci sequence, no? Where like 0 plus 1 equals 1, 1 plus 1 equals 2, 1 plus 2 equals 3, 2 plus 3 equals 5, like that whole business. And I think like the purpose of that is showing like intelligent design to like our universe.
Yeah, like Dave, if you can pull up some pictures of the Fibonacci spiral.
Yeah, we see that in with Leonardo da Vinci, and I'll come back to him too. Yeah, there's definitely Yeah, I'll also come back to intelligent design, because that's an essential kind of component of the flower of life. But definitely the Fibonacci sequence is something that it's omnipresent in nature, just like the flower of life is. So I don't know exactly how connected they are, but they have a lot of similarities for sure.
I was just looking it up. They're more connected than even I would have thought. The Akashic Records are the invisible energetic structure underneath reality, and the flower of life is the visible geometry of the Akashic Records.
Mm,
Oh,
interesting.
So that's really cool. I didn't know that, and
There you
Akashic
go.
Records is something I'm very interested in. So that's cool.
So there you go. There's another rabbit hole for you to go down, Dan.
Oh boy, yeah, so many. So basically, so in other words, a flower of life is offered is kind of like I mentioned earlier. It's considered a blueprint or template or a model for all creation. So there's a lot more sacred and mystical knowledge, right, that can be derived from the flower of life, and lots more about its sacred geometry, spiritual, creative, and energetic properties. For example, if you look at the sacred geometry, we could also look at something. I could have prepared some notes on this, but I don't want to make it too complicated. If you've heard of Metatron's cube before, and there's some angelic connections there too, but that goes like really deep. So I left this one. I've left this one out for now, but we can always come back to it, or I can always send you guys some stuff if ever you're interested in knowing more about Metatron's cube. It's another sacred geometric figure. It's very, very interesting. But anyway, getting back to flower of life, more importantly, so there's lots more about its role. So here, of course, there's the sacred geometry, like I mentioned, and all that. But I think it's important to look at its role as a driving force for everything in the cosmos, including you. Now, maybe for the listeners, maybe you guys can help me out. What's the difference between universe and cosmos?
I wouldn't know how to answer that.
You could always guess.
I mean, I would assume they're the same. But I'm guessing I'm wrong, because otherwise you wouldn't have asked.
No, it's good. I don't want to be the only one talking all the time. So if how about you guys? Yeah, any thoughts?
The cosmos is like what we like, the spiritual side. The universe is what we can see and feel.
Yeah, it's basically that's right. So
I agree with that.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically that's right. So the universe is everything that's material, right? The planets, us, atoms, etc. But the cosmos is the universe and the ethereal components. So all the
Okay.
okay, so all the the divinity or whatever you want to call it, right? Okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so here, like I said, it's like the flower of life is a sacred blueprint for all creation. So let me go to the next image and let me know if you see it here. So I kind of superimpose different images, right? Okay, great, you can see it. Fantastic. So let me decipher this a little bit. So it's evident right from the start. If you look at the left-hand side, now I just replicated flower of life on the left and on the right. But if you go on the left, we have the first little circle by itself, right? And then you have two overlapping circles, okay? And they form what we call a vesica piscis. That's the middle part, which has an oval shape. Okay, so in Christianity, the vesica piscis is widely regarded as representing the Holy Trinity. So God the Father, Jesus the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And we see it a lot in art, especially in paintings. Okay, but as anyone would argue, since the flower of life has basically preceded any organized religion for billions of years, we can instead view it as a threefold infusion: creator, being, and spirit.
Okay.
So creator, being, and spirit. Okay, so the spirit it could be the middle part if you want, the creator on the left and being on the right, or God the Father on the left, Jesus on the right, and the spirit part in the middle. So creator, being, and spirit. So in other words, right from the start, there's an ethereal quality or spirit, right, that is sparking and driving creation. And biologically, this can be witnessed and evidenced in, like, for example, in embryo formation. As two cells fuse together, they then split further into 4, 5, 6, 7 parts, and so on, right? So the intelligence is infused. The intelligence infused continues its work in a systematic manner, creating all physical life form or being. So I talk about creator, being, and spirit. So basically creating a physical life form, a being, okay, whether it's a plant or a lizard or a human. So humans, plants, animals, insects, flowers, you name it, are created in this fashion. There's a really amazing video. I'll send you guys the link later on. Just remind me if I forget. On YouTube that you can find. It's called "Breath of Life Caught on Camera." It's a really cool video because the narrator, by the way, is he's just a kind of like I think he's like a high school science teacher, but like a real one. You know, he really knows his biology and explains it really well. And he also explains one thing I like about him too is he also shows like some footage that the kind of mainstream scientists always show us. They always have these fine, fancy graphics, either images or videos, like, just like the fake NASA videos and stuff like that, just to make us believe some fairy tales, okay? But he really, what's really interesting, for example, I just mentioned cell division. He shows actual like footage, like with a salamander, which is a type of lizard, right? A salamander embryo forming in like time-lapse footage. And you could see basically like it splits in 2 and then in 3 and then in 4 and then it just grows, right? So it's just fascinating to watch it. And it's the exact same thing as, as the flower of life. And another thing he embeds also in his video, this is really cool too. He shows a very cool actual footage of under a microscope whereby white blood cells are attacking a parasite. This is fascinating. And so we have to wonder what exactly is driving or instructing these white blood cells to attack the parasite. How do they know they need to do this? So there's no doubt that it's the hallmark of intelligent design by the creator.
Wow. And what's the name of that video
The
again?
video,
On YouTube?
it's called Breath of Life Caught on Camera. It's about 10, 12 minutes long. Don't watch it now, but yeah, definitely watch it later.
Okay.
It's fascinating. And he links to a separate video where you can see these white blood cells attacking a parasite. So anyway, continuing with the image, so we have the progression like with cell division, right? Where these are represented as circles in the image and they replicate and overlap, growing the form. So a little bit to the right of the image I'm sharing here. So we have like 7 circles that we would call the egg of life, or on top, I kind of labeled it the seed of life. So the seed of life acts as the basic component of the flower of life design. And Christians will often equate it to the 7 days of creation as chronicled in the book of Genesis from the Bible. And Leonardo da Vinci, I mentioned earlier, Leonardo da Vinci, he knew about this, right? So he knew about this concept and even drew it and explained it in his drawing. So let me show a couple examples here. Can you see the first one here?
Yeah.
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 It's the
Okay.
flower of life.
Yeah. And, you know, he had, of course, this special way of writing his notes. You guys know how he wrote his notes?
No.
In what fashion he wrote his notes? Like we see some notes on the right. Do you know how? Because he kind of encoded it to make it difficult to read.
Is it backwards?
They look like they're right to left.
That's right. It's called mirror writing. So you would have to like put a mirror next to it and then read off the mirror. You know, it's like if you write hello backwards on the piece of paper from right to left, and then you put a mirror and then you'll see it written properly, right?
Wow.
So he would do that. So I'll give you another example later with the tarot, but basically it was a way maybe for not to overtly show this sacred knowledge. Okay. But people might argue he did that with most of his writing, but it's just a little side note here. And then here's another image showing it as well.
Very cool.
Damn.
So the guy was smart.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's another pattern of significance which can be derived from the flower of life, is that of the tree of life. Now, I'm sure Dave has probably heard of the tree of life, right? Because he looked into things like Kabbalah and all that, right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. And here, if Dave, feel free to correct me if I get anything wrong on this, but in Jewish mysticism, the Kabbalah, which is basically a set of esoteric teachings, right? It seeks to understand the nature of the universe and human beings within it, of course, among other things. So, put simply, they use the design inherent in the tree of life to better understand the cosmic forces or energy flows. Let me show. Hold on. Let me go to the next image. So I'll put things in a little bit better context here. Okay. Do you see here?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So let me explain that a little bit. So let me repeat that. So put simply, they use the design inherent in the tree of life to better understand the cosmic forces. Okay. So we have this word cosmic again, and forces, right? Or energy flows. So that act upon us and our external environment. So more specifically, which outer forces are acting upon us, these are called macrocosmic, and which inner forces, microcosmic, are driving our thoughts and behaviors, be it on a conscious or subconscious level. So there's a lot going on in our subconscious level, which we are unaware of. And on a side note, in China, I used to have this class I designed on dream interpretation, where we dove into tapping into the meaning of in the dream meanings that emanate from our subconscious, right? So this is something, because there's hypnotism and what's his name, the other famous psychologist, not Freud, but the other one worked on this a lot too. Why I forget his name.
Oh my God.
Is he from Austria? I forget why I forget his name. I have a bad memory sometimes.
Like
I forget.
his student, right? Freud's student.
No, but they were basically peers. They work at the same time. Well, what the heck? What is his name? Maybe I'll come back to me. Anyway.
Young?
So, say it again.
Young?
Yeah, Carl Jung.
Yeah,
Sorry,
Carl Jung. I was thinking Karl.
Yeah.
I was thinking Marx. I'm like, it's a Carl.
Yeah. Carl Jung,
Anyways,
Jung. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Dave. I'm getting old here. All right. So, but there's he did a lot of work on that too, right? So there's a lot going on in the subconscious, and some people can also tap into that more than others. And even I was asking I was asking my son, who's 7.5 now, I was asking him a few weeks ago if he dreams or if he can remember dreams. And he says, not at all. How about you guys? Do you remember your dreams or?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever
Sometimes.
try? Yeah. Do you ever try to kind of analyze them, or did he ever use a dream dictionary or something?
No.
Yeah, I have one, but I can control my dreams.
Yeah, me too.
Oh yeah. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
there's different types of dreams, right? There's like when I was teaching that class, there's like 6, 7 types. You know, there's lucid dreams, and then there are dreams you know you're dreaming, and like you just said, maybe you can change change the outcome, right?
Yeah, and Tammy and I both have predicted things or known things through dreams, and then like when we've woken up, like something has come to pass that we had dreamt about, that
Yeah.
thing happening. So
Yeah, those
yeah.
are precognitive dreams,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just another little side note here. My father was a doctor, and he had 2 interesting patients he told us about one time. He had one that had precognitive dreams, and they would often be like nightmares, and they would come true. And he had another one that had clairvoyance. So, and it was problematic for him because he was a photographer, and when he would look in his camera, he would see something bad that was happening somewhere else on the planet.
Huh.
Like, yeah. So it's
That's
quite.
really weird.
My dad was like he's more the scientific type, but he was very open minded, of course. But so anyway, I'm a little bit getting sidetracked here. So, but. No, but dreams is very, very interesting too. So it's something we can always talk about sometime too. And the Chinese actually had from ancient China, they actually had a dream dictionary, which is really, really interesting. And I can't remember all the dreams, but they had some specific dreams, and some of them with the serpents were actually good. They were not bad. I forget the meaning. I can't remember if it was like you'll get success or money, or I can't remember what it was, but it was surprisingly good, even if you had a dream with like a snake or a serpent. But anyway, so when we're talking about, because I just mentioned these forces, right? Macrocosmic and microcosmic forces. These are actually the basis of the tarot. Okay, with what we refer. Okay, but if you buy a deck of tarot cards, it might be confusing because I forget how many cards, 72 cards or something, right? But actually, there are 22 that are important, and if you go for a tarot reading, they will use those 20. Most of them would just use those 22. Now, the 22 they use are referred to as the major arcana. So there are 11 macrocosmic cards, and there are 11 microcosmic cards. So, let me show you. I think I have a couple images here.
Yeah, there's 78 of them. 56 are the minor arcana. 22 are major.
That's right. Okay, so we can see on the image here. Like you guys can see the image, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay, so we have like on the left-hand side, we have the macrocosmic tree of life. Okay, so here they're depicted with some specific cards, and there's an example of one of the card here on the right. So like I actually, when I was in China, I would do the tarot readings too. And I studied these cards, and I can talk a little bit about it later. But basically the main idea here is that you have these macrocosmic forces. It's basically everything that's outside your body, in the environment near you, and, all the way out to, the cosmos, right? So these are things that are affecting you, okay? And they affect people in different ways. And then you have the microcosmic forces, which are within you. It could be some anxiety that you have. Maybe it's something you're struggling with on a subconscious level, or, I'm sure you've all had that feeling that there's something that's just not right, and I can't put my finger on it, or like And it doesn't necessarily have to be negative. Sometimes of course, it could be positive too.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So anyway, I can get in deeper and further back in history on like the tree of life, and they call it I don't know if my pronunciation is correct, the Sephiroth, or maybe Dave has the correct pronunciation there. Sephiroth.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can go back into the history, because this is, although we get this from Jewish mysticism, it goes way back. I can dig into that a little bit deeper if you want, but maybe I don't want to I don't want to bore your audience if
No,
that
I'm
goes too
interested.
deep. Or I can tell you more about the tarot a little bit, or whatever you want.
I'm up for anything. Anyone have requests?
I'm kind of interested in the tarot, but just because so many people talk about it, it's really popular with, I guess, like mostly women my age, I find, but I don't get it.
Okay. Let me hear. I have another thing. I have a little bit of notes for the tarot.
Yeah, like how do you draw like because I don't know. To me, it seems like some kind of fortune telling. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But how do you draw that from a card that you show to someone or read from someone?
I mean, first, like, I'm always I don't know. This is like maybe the way I do things, and I do this with my writing. Sometimes, often, is I like to kind of zoom out. Get a 50,000 foot overview. So we have to look at, well, what is a tarot? Okay, because most people think, oh, tarot is just a bunch of playing cards, right? Or it's a card maybe for fortune telling or something. Okay, but so it can be considered many things. It could be, just like I said, it could be considered, a set of playing cards or a card game.
Well,
It could
that,
be considered.
that is what it started as in like the 1400s or something in Italy. No, for a game called Tarocchi.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but there are roots that can go back even way back to even ancient Egypt too.
Oh wow.
So just to continue the overview, so it could be considered like that, playing cards, a card game. It could be considered a means of clairvoyance. That's how I use it. For example, if I do tarot readings, I do it in that context, and I can elaborate on that later. It could be used as a means of precognition, so predicting the future. I don't do that, but that's what, like, for example, what a fortune teller would do. If you go to see a fortune teller, and she or he, but usually a she, uses tarot cards, to see if you're going to meet your handsome beau, or if you're going to be rich or whatever. So that could be one thing. It could be considered a form of divination. But here, if you want my opinion, like, it's more considered a book of ancient knowledge.
So, can you explain, in just kind of like your own terms, I guess, like how you think that tarot works? Like
That's more what I'm
the
asking. Like, how can you pull a card and
medium,
know? Yeah.
like, is it basically in a way like maybe like the wavelengths and the kind of like, I don't know, the esoteric behind the two people who are kind of in communion while they're pulling the cards. The person pulling the cards is able to kind of pick up on certain signals, and the like how do the cards come out of the deck in the right
Okay,
order
so yeah, like, for example, like I said, I use it as a mean of clairvoyance. So I'll explain. So I used to do this, especially during Halloween time, because people love to have their, the tarot reading on the Halloween time. And most people just thought it was BS and all that, including me at the beginning. And then I started researching and said, there's a little bit more to it than I thought. So basically, the way I would do it, and like I said, I use it as more of a tool or means of clairvoyance to help somebody out. And you could do it on yourself too. So basically, you take those 22 cards, right? And you shuffle them so you face down so you cannot see them, right? And then you can instruct the other person, okay, just clear your mind, don't think of anything, clear your mind, take a good deep breath, and then just pick 5 cards with your fingers and put them left to right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. And now, so to answer, I don't know if it was Tammy or Ash that was asking earlier, like what would like what explains like how people choose cards or whatever. It's exactly what we were looking at. Okay. So it's basically the forces, the driving forces, the energy. So these macrocosmic forces, they're acting upon you. Okay. And you have your own microcosmic forces inside of you. So there's something driving you to take your finger and select that card and slide it towards you as the first card. And then you like some people, of course, they might just do it randomly. They don't really care. But if somebody's like engaging in this activity and they're kind of taking seriously, then something's going to drive them. Okay, don't ask me what. It's just these forces.
So it's kind of like a divine intervention?
Not necessarily divine intervention, but it's just more like I said, it's just more these forces. Okay. All right.
So I bought some tarot cards, and the first time I don't know anything about tarot, and I didn't know anything about tarot, but the first time that I tried doing it on myself, I picked like whatever the card was. That's basically like the Dark Stranger or whatever, the one that kind of means like death.
Yeah.
and then my dog died. So I never picked them up after that.
Okay.
I almost burned them.
I mean, that could be coincidences, because sometimes some cards that look bad, like death, aren't necessarily bad, because it depends on a few things. It depends on the cards next to them, and it depends on what's happening, what could be happening in your life. Maybe you have some unresolved issues, or maybe if there's these outer forces, you're going to be audited by Revenue Canada, and you're going to be audited, and you could be stressed about that or whatever, Okay. So, I mean,
that was a bit on the nose for me, and I kind of got scared, so I never picked them up after that. But
yeah, and I mean,
but like I believe in them then.
Sure. I mean, if you look, that's why I need to, I'll come back to it after, because I want to answer your question first, but I'll come back to the background and the 50,000 foot overview, because in each card you have lots of symbols, right? And here we see the Fool, which is a very interesting card. Okay, we have the Sun on the top left. He's holding a staff with the, whatchamacallit, they're little, those little runaway bags, when we were young, we run away from home. Yeah, I forget the name. And then there's a dog at the bottom and different things like that, right? So each card has a bunch of symbols, right? Okay, so maybe if I go back to kind of my overview, right? So like I said, while the tarot can be viewed as all those things I mentioned, at its core, it's really an ancient book of mystical knowledge before it became a game, before it became popular in the Middle Ages in Europe. Okay. So, and, like I said, there are traces of earlier origins, like it could go back to ancient Egypt, but basically, because you got to think, when did this become popular? It became popular in Europe in the Middle Ages. What was happening? Let me ask you, what was happening in the Middle Ages in Europe, especially for those sharing kind of like mystical knowledge? What could happen to them?
Witch burning?
Yeah. So they could be seen as outcasts, witches, wizards, right? And if they dare to reveal or, share what they knew as sooth, right? That's why we hear sometimes soothsayers, right? They're practicing some kind of divination. They could be like perceived as a witch, and they might, if they're caught, they might be tortured or like burned at the stake, right, for witchcraft or sorcery.
Yeah.
So if you look at it in that context, to adapt, these people a lot of them were very, of course, very smart, very knowledgeable. They did have, they were privy to a lot of this kind of mystical knowledge. So they had to adapt to keep it safe, right? So they opted to share their knowledge in an encoded fashion. Just like I mentioned Da Vinci earlier, he used mirror writing, okay, but this is a little bit more encoded. Right, so this could keep the persecutors at bay. So
And then
how
that
they
would make
manage
sense
that
why a playing card form, so
sure,
that it made it
exactly.
look
So
a little less on the nose.
yeah, exactly. So they encoded their secret knowledge in the form of visual symbols, right?
Okay.
So they devised the means to convey them the tarot. Okay, so like we could always do this on another show if you want, but I spent a lot of time analyzing, and I still have a lot of work to do, but I did do kind of my own summary sheet of all the 11 macrocosmic cards and the 11 microcosmic cards, and also like what they represent. So like what they represent. So let's see, for example, maybe I'll just read one. So the one I have, okay, so here, let me read some of my notes. Okay, so this card represents knowledge or self. Now, the interpretations, if you're doing a tarot reading, right, you want to give some kind of interpretation. So if the person draws that card, they want to know what it means, right?
Sorry, are you
What
still talking about the Fool?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, did you change
the
over to a
Fool.
different card?
No, can you see the Fool on the screen?
Yes. Yeah.
So the Fool
okay.
represents knowledge?
Yeah, knowledge and self.
Huh. Okay.
Okay, and
now when someone calls me a fool, I'm going to feel good about it.
Yeah, that's what I meant earlier. If you get death or fool, like don't be like, I would say don't be fooled. But the card isn't necessarily what you think it is. Okay.
Okay.
Maybe that adds to the kind of like what I just mentioned. It adds to the kind of the encoding or I don't know, just to make it a little bit more kind of secretive in a sense, right?
Right, and you do you need to open yourself up to being a fool if you want to gain knowledge, because if you don't know what you don't know, you have the risk of becoming a fool, but at the end you could gain knowledge from it.
Yeah, because like the interpretation is the knowledge of oneself, right, of one's soul. So here, an interpretation could be travel, right? Maybe somebody could be embarking on a venture, right? Or taking a leap of faith, right? And just for one example of the symbolism, you see the sun in his back, right? So he's backed with brightness. Okay, so actually, like the journey is a positive, right? Is likely to be successful to find what this person is seeking.
Sorry, Dan, just a quick thing, just because I just thought of it here, but is the interpretation of the card decided by the card reader, or is the interpretation, could that also mean his back to the sun is he's turning on the right path, right? Like maybe he's going the wrong way. Like do you interpret these as the card reader, or are there already interpretations of them that a card reader has to follow?
Well, what I do is like maybe some different people have like the different interpretation of the symbols, but when I do the reading, all I do is I interpret the symbols.
Okay.
So I explain to the person what the symbol means. I don't try to get into their life or, don't even ask him, are you going on a trip or this or that? I don't want to ask any questions. I just explain the cards. Okay. But the only other thing I explain besides the individual cards is usually there's 5 cards from left to right? The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they always connect with each other. Okay.
Okay.
It's hard to explain now, but maybe we can do another show sometime, and maybe I can do a trivia thing. Whoever wins the trivia, I can do a tarot reading, and we
That'd
can
be
actually
fun.
do it. We could do it
That
in
would be
real
fun.
time. We could do it real time. We can pop up the 5 cards on the screen, and I can give you a proper reading there.
That'd be
Okay.
awesome.
Yeah. Maybe I can go back to the other card. Maybe I can just do 2. Let me see if I can go back to the other card. The world. Can you see that? Yeah.
Hmm.
Yep.
Okay. So the world. So this is a macrocosmic card, right? So it represents knowledge, nature. So it's in terms of interpretations, understanding of nature of human consciousness, right? So here we have like basically 4 elements in the symbolism, which represents nature. But like I said too, I had like my research is not complete, and I wish sometimes I wish I had more time, because I have this awesome book. It has an anonymous author, but you could probably find it on Amazon or whatever. It's called Meditations on the Tarot. It is huge, and it's very small print too. I don't know, it's probably 900 pages or something. And each card might have like 30 pages of like esoteric
Wow.
like knowledge and explaining the symbology, and it goes wicked deep. And I've done it for some of the cards, and I actually made it like a second version of my tarot file, but I would need probably like several months to go through that book and to do a really proper one to better understand the symbols. Right.
Hmm.
And I have another deck here, and I actually used part of this other deck when I was on the guys with the Big Puff. So shout out to Big Puff crew. If they listen to this, Lex and Beach, they might recall. And I think this is one of the only few podcasts that I had that it was a paid one, but I gave an example of one of the tarot cards. It was a number 6. And because the numerology comes into this as well, but I had a deck of Egyptian tarot cards, and I used one in there. But maybe, yeah, because I mean, we can come back to the history aspects if you want to, but basically the Jewish mysticism, like I said, they like if you know history of the Bible, the Jews or the Israelites, right? They were held in captivity. They were held in captivity both in Egypt and in Mesopotamia, right? So that's where they gained knowledge of, the high priests of those cultures, right? So in Egyptian mysticism, there's we can talk about the numerology and all that too, but like maybe just a little. So in Egyptian mysticism, numerology, 7 represents success through commitment, wisdom, and discernment, right? And it also represents the power of magic, and it personifies the spirit of God across the universe, so the cosmos, right? So which equals everything in the universe plus the divine spirits, like I said earlier. So
is that why it's lucky number 7 with slots?
maybe but it's like the divine spirit, right? So I mentioned earlier breath of life. That's what we're talking about, right? It provides the vitality of life. This is very, very important to the ancient Egyptians, right? So whether it's in human beings or any other species, it is also what we call mind as opposed to matter. Now, you'll often hear mind and matter, and you'll even have the question, which came first, the mind or the matter? So the matter is the physical components, let's say, of the cells, right? But I gave the example earlier of those white blood cells. Okay, they're made of whatever these chemical components, sure. But it's almost like they have a mind, right? Because they're grouping together to go and attack the parasite. And if you guys are familiar with Edgar Allan Poe's work, he knew about this. He wrote about this, and I think because my image viewer, I just had an error message on it. My image viewer, maybe is it still good?
I see the
Still
the
good?
tarot card, the world.
Okay, okay.
The world.
All right. If I get another thing, maybe I should close some windows here because I think my computer might be getting low on power here. Yeah, I forget what I was going to say now.
Edgar Allan Poe.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah. So okay, so yeah, so Edgar Allan Poe. So for example, I'm talking about Mind and Matter. Have you read any of his short stories before?
No, I don't know much about him.
Okay, if you heard of one, I didn't really prepare for this. I'm just going off memory here, but there was a really famous one called The Pit and the Pendulum.
Okay.
Okay,
sounds
so
familiar, but I don't know.
it's basically this prisoner in like a dungeon, right? And this is during the right after the Crusades in Spain. They had the Inquisition, right? Okay, and it's basically he's basically strapped on a table, and there's this big blade that's kind of going down from the ceiling very slowly towards him. But anyway, if you kind of read between the lines in that short story of Edgar Allan Poe, he explains very clearly that mind came before matter. And he also wrote, people are not familiar with this, but he wrote it's a book, basically. He called it a prose poem because he had to disguise what he was doing. Because just like the tarot and like Da Vinci, the people who were privy to this sacred knowledge, they would have to kind of disguise it. So he would say, oh, this is just a prose poem. But he wrote this book called Eureka. And it's basically a metaphysical treatise on like the universe. And it explains all these concepts that we kind of been looking for, especially these macrocosmic forces. It's very, very deep. You can find it online. I can always give you a link to where you can find it if you're interested.
Yeah, I'm interested for sure.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, I might not have them handy, but I can make
I'll remind you.
a note.
Yeah.
I'll make a note here, and I can send to you. So it's so he Edgar Allan Poe. If you read his stuff, the guy was a wordsmith, right? Just like Da Vinci or Raphael were good on the canvas, right? This guy was good with words, and you see it in the short story Pit and the Pendulum. But he also expresses it. It's quite deep in Eureka. And you got to think of the time here, which is really, really interesting, because it's a time around, there's this really interesting period that right after, there's a famous scientist, Newton, right? With the apple dropping on his head and so on, right? And there was, and this I talked about with the guys on Big Puff too, because we were talking about the rainbow flag. And I was explaining that the rainbow flag had 6 colors and not 7, like in Newton's prism experiment. The prism is like a little kind of like a, I don't know, a little kind of like crystal triangle you hold up to a light, and it displays the colors of the rainbow. Of course, there's infinite colors of the rainbow, but like the true rainbow there had 7 colors, but the pride flag has 6. You can even go back to the Apple logo, the original Apple logo, same thing, had those 6 colors, if you remember.
What color is missing?
I forget which color is missing, but it's basically the color that represents the light. And I mentioned the Bible earlier. There was 7 days of creation, right? Or the 6 days of creation. And then there was the other one. So they're dropping the other one. In other words, they're mocking God.
Interesting.
So they let go of that.
Do you think that this somehow ties into Gnosticism and how, that type of tradition has been kind of lost? There are a lot of texts that were burned in the, the Fire of Alexandria, all that kind of stuff. Like, it sounds to me like this could be connected somehow.
Yeah, I mean the Gnosticism. Yeah, I mean, I did. There was a really good book I read by Graham Hancock. It's a pretty big book
Oh,
called
I like Graham Hancock.
The Master Game. I think it's called The Master Game. I have it back in my bookshelf over there, if I'm not mistaken. The Master Game, and he goes through the whole kind of Gnosticism kind of evolution since the time of Christ, right?
I'll have to read that. I really like Graham Hancock.
Yeah,
too, so.
but I don't necessarily think this ties into the Gnosticism. But the point I wanted to make about kind of like the period, like Newton, and then we had mid-19th century, and this is about the period, and I think this is what Edgar Allan Poe is trying to convey in a lot of, especially in his Eureka work, is that that's pretty much the point in Western society where scientists have foregone or let go of, the creator or the creative force, the divine force in science. Okay, so they kind of let go of that aspect, or purposely have taken it out, because they don't want people to know about these things, about there's a creator, there's a God. They rather, want people to to think Lucifer is the God, and so on, right? So that's why you see all this messed up science, is because even Newton understood this, right? He kept, the God aspect in the science, and all the great scientists, did before that. But that suddenly shifted in the mid-19th century. And that's why we don't see, yeah, of course they're good scientists, right? But we don't see that many like really, really good scientists, because they've kind of let go of that particular aspect. So I don't know.
What scientist was it who said God is dead? Like basically,
was
that Darwin? No, who was that? That basically,
isn't it Nietzsche? But that's a philosopher,
right? I don't know, but yeah, it might have been.
I think it's Friedrich Nietzsche.
Yeah, and it basically that same sort of idea where it's like they're, pointing out that God is being taken out, or spirituality is being taken out of, like our everyday lives, and reason or science is kind of like taking over as God. I don't know.
Yeah. So, yeah. Well, I mean, we can. Like I said, though, there's still a ton of research I would need to do, but I have a fairly good base on the, the symbols of the cards and all that. So if we do a show in the future, I can definitely do a reading for for one of you, if that would interest you.
That would be so much fun. Yeah. That'd
Yeah.
be awesome.
Yeah.
And I can always share my file with you guys. So if you want to do a reading on somebody else, and you could
I'm afraid to.
No, I mean, like, you shouldn't be afraid to, because at any point, and you can, and like sometimes I would do, it's funny. Sometimes I would do maybe readings, like some people, maybe they had like 3 cards that in their context was like more negative, and they say, I don't like this. Can we do it again? And I said, no, you can't do it again, because this is that's why I said this is for me, it's clairvoyance tool. So this is a snapshot of your life right now. What are the forces, the outer forces, macrocosmic forces acting upon you? And what are the inner ones? And are there some in your subconscious that you need to kind of like elevate and you need to think about? So I said, no, you don't do another reading for a while. You need to ponder and contemplate on what the cards are trying to tell you, because they can influence like maybe your journey going forward, right? Maybe you can you say, I never realized that about myself. But now that I do, or maybe I was too trusting of, this institution. I didn't maybe view it as a threat that it could be on me or my well-being or my health or my sanity or whatever. So you have to kind of like ponder it a little bit. So I think it's a really interesting tool. I know a lot of, and I follow a lot of the work of a lot of exorcists and all that, and they say, of course, stay away from the Ouija board, stay away from the tarot. But I don't see it necessarily as the tarot as, I would never use it to try to do the precognition. I just kind of look at it as, look, this relates to the flower of life. What is the flower of life? It's the design and everything. It's including the forces that are acting upon all these creations. So you can't ignore that. You have to, or you should, be cognizant and aware of it. And if you're not, then you're missing out on something, right?
So what do you how do you use the tarot, say when you're doing a reading for someone? Um how do you kind of frame it for them so that they can kind of take the information you've given them and kind of do something with it?
I
Like how
just
do you
yeah. I just basically interpret the cards, and I try not to get into, like I said earlier, I won't get into questions about or ask them questions about what's going on or this or that. I'm just saying this card is saying that there's some external forces acting upon you, like in a negative way or in this kind of way, and that you need to ponder that. They will, they need to think about that themselves,
right. So
right?
you leave it up to them to kind of decipher the information that you've
Yeah,
given to them
I just
and
explain what the cards are, the symbology in the card, the meaning and the interpretation. The interpretation, like I said earlier, the meaning or interpretation.
right. And then the interplay between, the cards that are kind of touching each other, you can kind of explain what that might mean as well. And then,
Yeah, how they
um,
connect with each other, definitely. Yeah,
right. And so then the people who are having the reading done can then kind of take some time to be introspective and think about what that
yeah,
might mean for them. And
yeah.
do you ever have people who make connections and say like, "Hey, do you think it could mean this or that?" Or
Uh,
um,
Not so much, and I wouldn't give my opinion. The only thing I would say sometimes is, I would make maybe some observations. I would say, "Oh, interesting. You have 4 macrocosmic cards, but you only have 1 microcosmic card." And then depending on the cards, I might ask them, "Well, why do you think you have like these 4 macrocosmic cards?" Maybe I don't know, they might say, "Well, there's a lot going on in my life. I have a lot of pressure from other sources, other parties or whatever, right?" Well, that
mhm,
could definitely explain things, right? But I don't go to try and like try to find something in their life to connect to the card. Never. Like that's up to them.
right,
I just read the cards and tell them, how they connect with one another and what the symbols are, and yeah, basically the what it represents, the interpretation and the symbolism. So I try not to to go into their lives, because number one, not really my business. But
right.
yeah.
That's interesting though, because I know quite a number of people in my life who've gone to psychics, and kind of the same thing where um, they will um, kind of explain the thoughts and feelings that they're getting from this session to
Mhm.
my friends or family who have gone, but they try their best not to kind of interpret too much or to get into their lives. They basically just tell them um kind of like what they're feeling, or I feel like the few people that have gone and have really been blown away by it, the
Mm-hmm.
people weren't trying to like, oh, do you have, I don't know, I don't even know how to how to say it, but basically like they're not trying too hard to pry. They're basically
Mm-hmm.
just kind of giving interesting information that's hard to um uh, it's hard to misinterpret. Like it really
Mm-hmm.
means something to them, and so they're like, wow, I had no idea like
Mm-hmm.
that it would be that kind of like poignant.
Yeah.
So
Well, I'll just give you an example. It's really interesting when you do it on yourself, and when you do it on, like, if I do it on my wife, for example, because we know each other very well, right? We know what's going on. We know what kind of outer forces are acting. Maybe we don't know as much, like the microcosmic things going on, but we do know a lot more of the macrocosmic things affecting us, because usually they affect both of us, right? And same thing with your spouses, right? So it's always interesting to see, like, sometimes, especially if I do it on my wife or myself, I could go, holy moly, yeah, okay. And sometimes maybe I haven't done it in a while, but sometimes if there's something that's kind of bothering me or grinding me inside or something, then I could do it, and then maybe I really, really take a closer look at the microcosmic cards and say, okay, well, maybe something's eating me up inside. What is it, or what could it be, or it could help me find it. Just like a patient would go see a psychologist or a psychiatrist, right, about something that's eating them, or they'll try to discuss it, and then the psychologist or psychiatrist will try to dig deeper and try to see, well, what's at the root of the problem, or maybe something's happening on subconscious level. So it's almost like a self-help 101 kind of thing. It could be used as that. Yeah, because these forces, like, they're acting upon us. You began the broadcast with the talk of chemtrails. Okay, well, that affects not only our physical outward environment, but it affects us mentally as well, right?
it definitely affects me mentally. It's
Yeah,
insane.
I mean,
And my
yeah,
husband
exactly,
can't
right?
stand it.
It can eat away at you, and sometimes I mean, I get so frustrated, right? Because I know a lot about it, and I've been somebody who's been really proactive. I've contacted, like, I told Ashley yesterday, I've contacted the RCMP, the Sûreté du Québec, CSIS. I wrote them open letters in part 4 of my geoengineering series on my Substack, and only CSIS replied back, and they basically said, it's not our job, because I laid out in 3-4 pages, like, a lot of some things going on and how it should be investigated and how it could be, affecting our environment and people's health and different things like that. And so, like, I get frustrated because I did a lot of work, and I did it very professionally. I did it very politely and everything, right? And I have a whole section, like, of all my communications with Environment Canada, Department of Defense, you name it, about, inquiring about this, trying to like, be proactive and trying to, get this problem recognized and addressed and taken seriously and maybe investigated and so on. And then, nothing happens. And I've been doing this for a few years, and it's frustrating. So it can affect my mood. I know how to kind of manage it. Yeah. But, when you stick your nose outside and you see it about 5-6 times a week, it's hard to ignore, right? So we say in French, it's gonna affect you inwardly too. It's very interesting too. I met this American when I was in China, and I did a little bit of martial arts and the kung fu at the beginning when I was in China. But this guy he went there to China for that, and he explained something to me, a concept for me he learned in China. Is called Wai Gong and Nei Gong. So So basically, Wai Gong is everything that's on, if I'm not mistaken here, I'm going off memory from a long time, but Wai Gong is everything outside and Nei Gong is everything inside. So he said, okay, punch me in the stomach. And I was kind of reluctant to do that, right? And then he said, punch me really, really hard in the stomach, right? Okay, and I could do it. And a lot of like martial arts practitioners, they can get hit and they will feel no pain. Why? Because they can manage their inner, I don't know if it's their inner alchemy or I don't know what to call it, but they can like get hit and not feel the pain. And all those masters in martial arts, they know how to do that. And if you look at when I did the martial arts, it was we had 3 parts. We did kung fu, we did tai chi, and we did the Thai kickboxing. I love the Thai kickboxing. Of course, I love the kung fu too. But the most difficult one for me was the tai chi, because the tai chi, the chi is the energy, is the flow, and it's, you have to make these. I don't know if ever you saw like an old man or woman like in China or on the video, they're doing Tai Chi in the park and they're moving super slow with their arms and all that, right? It looks a little bit weird and all that, but they're channeling the flow of energy that's going through their body. It's very, very interesting. And I had this one student I was teaching in this company. He's a big Chinese guy, right? And he used to do Kung Fu. And he told me about a story one day. He was like early 20s, right? Like big, solid guy, probably 6 foot, maybe 240, 250 pounds or whatever. And he told me, I met this Tai Chi master. And then he basically became his master after. And he like, I don't know what was the context, but they had to do like a fight or something. And this 60-year-old little kind of man, what, you know, probably weighed about $120 or something, he whooped my student when he was young, right? And my student told me, he said, Dan, I had to find out how he could do that. And then, so then he, you know, and I exchanged a lot with that student, and I always took notes. And his English wasn't super great, but like we could communicate a lot. And he taught me a lot about like ancient Chinese, like all different aspects of the of some of these things. And yeah, I would take notes and screenshots and all that. I'd have to find all my stuff, but very, very fascinating. So anyway, this I'm getting off a little bit on tangents here. Maybe I'll leave it at that. But it just show a few more examples of how these life forces kind of like work, and I think it's interesting.
Absolutely.
Very interesting.
Hey, Dave, I see that you have a connection to me.
Watch this reaching about to happen right now. But I have to share the screen though. I can't.
Oh, let me stop my screen share.
Yeah.
How do I do this? Ask show manager to stop screen recording. Oh, I think one of you have to stop it, or do I just close the?
Yep, I can do it. I'm going to stop.
Oh, maybe you can stop. If you can't do it, let me know. I'll close the. If it doesn't work, let me know. I'll close the image thing.
There should be a button somewhere that just says "Stop Share Screen," like it's posted up.
For me,
on that.
no.
Yeah.
So Dan, I think it's you that.
It's me.
That's
I don't.
So it's right beside the camera.
Right beside the camera.
I could try Control S. Hang on.
Oh yeah, on your end, Dan, try Control S.
Control S.
Yeah.
Okay. Control S.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks.
Did it.
There you go.
We need a tech whiz here.
All right.
Yeah.
It's time to reach. So as soon as Ash said there must be some sort of Gnostic connection, I was like,
you know where my brain goes.
I was like, hell yeah, there must be. Let's go find it. All right. So obviously this all comes from Dan's very informative presentation today that got me searching down a rabbit hole instantaneously. So back to in the beginning, you mentioned this caduceus staff, right? So this is gonna be more of a visual, and everybody, let's just look at what's going on here, right? Okay, caduceus staff, and that's like the symbol at the top of the staff, right? And then you mentioned the tree of Kabbalah and whatnot, right? So that's a little like overlay over top of the tree of, right? If you see that. Oh, hold on, it's not changing for you guys.
No.
Oh, I was definitely
I see
changing.
some
I was
magic
definitely
cards in
changing
there, though.
pictures, and I was just like, yeah, you guys are definitely seeing this. Okay, ready? Boom. So that's the overlay of the caduceus staff over the tree of Kabbalah. Because if you go
No way.
here,
Interesting.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if we keep going from the tree of Kabbalah, we end up at the tree of life. All right, which is, whatever, same kind of theme going on. We got some balls, they mean stuff.
Those are chakras.
Yeah, we're back to Chakra Town over here. And then just for shits and giggles, I found the logo inside the Medical Corps for the United States Army Medical Corps. But then
I thought it was.
as we move along, in Egypt on the left side, apparently like this thing right here, just think of it as like version 1.0 of this whole situation, or maybe 2.0, because I'm going to show you 1.0 after this. And then a detailed situation of what's going on inside that thing that you could find on Egyptian walls would be something like this. It's called the Ankh, right? And then they have like explanations with their like points of power, sunrise, sunset, whatever, portal of life, fallopian tubes in the vagina gets involved down there.
Womb of life. Okay.
Okay. So then when you're thinking of the Ankh, you're pretty close to saying the word Anunnaki. So then you share this tab instead.
Bit of a stretch, Dave.
Check it out. I'm getting somewhere with this. So here is Mesopotamia and their gods, the Anunnaki. This would be either An or Ki or Enlil or Enki or whatever. And see that thing in the middle that they're like reaching towards?
Mhm.
Now, Babylonian gods, same thing, influenced by the same belief system of what's going on there. Okay. Right.
Yeah,
right?
I was gonna show that one.
Right.
Yeah.
See what's going on there. Boom. Brilliant. So who do they believe in? They believe in the Anunnaki. As seen here, the Anunnaki, a group of deities in ancient Mesopotamian mythology. And these are the ones that came down from the heavens, blah, 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 right?
And made giants.
Right.
And they were giants.
So in Gnostic thought, the archons, including Yaldabaoth, are considered to be without a soul and often depicting lack of compassion and empathy. According to Gnostic texts, the Anunnaki or archons are seen as entities that attempted to interbreed with humanity but failed as described in the Nag Hammadi codes, which last week Tammy mentioned as what was the library that we talked about last week that was found? Nag Hammadi, the library that they found inside the urns that got smashed. We talked about it last week.
That's Nag Hammadi.
Yeah, that was the one that we talked about, right?
Yeah.
Boom. And then in Gnostic teachings, the archons are described as malevolent beings, and those are the ones that feed off our loosh.
Interesting.
And that's how I got all the way from that symbol to over here. Thank you. That is all.
I like it.
Yeah, I had some images on the so we mentioned the Sephiroth of the Kabbalah, right? And so it basically stems from the tree of life of Assyria, which is itself is modeled on the earlier Sumerian tree of life. So the one of them that you showed, Dave, was very similar to the Sumerian tree of life, right?
Yes,
so
sir.
they both depict the tree with the multiple spheres, along with the god figure atop, and often with the winged Asur for the Assyrian god, or Anu, the sky god, the sky god, or father of gods for the Sumerian, right? And we see this in like clay tablets and cylinder seals, right? So they represent the divine life forces that spur all creation, including thoughts and consciousness. And the Sumerian ones have 7 levels vertically, so, or branches or nodes, and so these, again, they're representative of the 7 chakra points, through which the life force energy flows, like through the human body and all beings, right? It's the this first major civilization, they knew about this, right? That's why they really want to suppress this information, because they don't want people like synthesizing all this information, putting it together, or just even being mindful of it, because they don't want people to be able to attain this like increased state of awareness of the natural world, of truth, of the divine truth, and even to understand our very selves. Somebody, I can't remember who mentioned earlier, like people are voting today, they can't tie their shoelaces. People don't understand themselves, they're not connected with themselves, right? But if they knew more about these things, they could connect, in a more like seamless fashion. And I'm not getting all like kind of gnostic or one world consciousness, kind of like that's a psyop for, Alex Jones. And I had a great guest, Terry Wolf, that exposes all these like BS, like one consciousness scam, that they basically want to replace all of this with, right? Terry Wolf, I have two episodes on my podcast. If people are interested, they can check that out. So people they want to suppress, just people need to better understand how these flows of spiritual energy just drives everything: thoughts, emotions, self-fulfillment, healing, so they can experience a more fulfilled experience, or existence, I should say, right? They want people to be
Absolutely.
miserable, sadly. But so the more you know, right? If you understand these things more, you can be more in, I don't want to sound cliche, but you can be more in touch with nature and being more in touch with yourself, and look at, because we're talking about chemtrails earlier and all that, and it's easy to get depressed. But whenever I feel like that, we have a pond in the backyard, so I just go to my pond and I look, okay, well, what's growing, what's blooming today? I have maybe I have these lily pads, or I have these like flowers or whatever, and something's growing. Okay, this is the breath of life. You're right in front of me. It's all around us. And there have been a few times, right, in the history of this planet, where this is basically, the living things on this planet have been wiped out. And let's say that happens, I don't know, let's say there's a World War III nuclear explosion, everybody dies, right? This planet and in life, eventually, okay, there could be a down period for thousands of years or whatever, but eventually it'll continue, right? If we have light, energy from the sun, we have water, and life will persist. It'll eat up like these skyscrapers, like 100-floor skyscrapers might take a few thousand years, but it'll eat it up. Put a piece of metal in your backyard, for in a few hundred years, it's going to dissolve, right? So,
Right.
I don't know. God will not be mocked. I mean, this is there's nothing stronger than this life force. It's happening everywhere. You're all in front of a desk now. Well, if you look at the very kind of microscopic level in the piece of wood, there's vibration happening in there. There's motion. It's not like that. And it's just life. Life, it doesn't stop. Okay, so they, I don't know. It's just maybe I getting a little bit too spiritual here, but that's just the way I see
that's
things.
Amazing. I love it, and we talk a lot about that on the podcast, and we are trying to kind of, we go down some deep rabbit holes that are pretty dark, and now we're
Mm-hmm.
kind of trying to balance that with talking about these kinds of things, and trying to take more control over the things that we can in our lives to inject positivity and focus on like our positive energies and what have you. So I think that's probably a good place to end it. And what a great way for you to kind of wrap that up with such a nice positive message, because, we have the election going on as
Oh
we
boy.
speak right now, literally. And I mean, some people I think are feeling pretty positive about what might happen from the election, but I think there are a lot of us who aren't quite so positive about either direction it could go. And so what we have to do is, find what we can, like you said, go into your backyard and look at the things that are growing, and put your feet on the ground, do grounding, just try and connect with nature as much as you can, and try not to let things get to you, because that's what they want. So um yeah.
Yeah, I just a little side note. You said grounding. Another thing, I don't know if you guys tried, but there's something called sun gazing.
Yes.
And I don't
Yeah.
mean staring at the sun when it's noon outside. Okay, there's a technique to it, and you can it's you basically at sunset, right? And you can do it just for like 10 seconds at the beginning, and then 15 seconds, and then you increase it. And where I used to live, it was sunny most days, so I could do it for a while. You could not do that in Quebec or unterrible. But that's a way. That's a way where light would actually go in you, and people would do this to cure themselves of disease, and also to increase their consciousness. Also, so I just wanted to do a side note on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, all the blood that cycles through your body passes through your eyes, and that's one of the thinnest layers that you have is your eyeballs, and then your blood vessels behind it. And so, when you sun gaze, you actually get UV light into your blood and
Mm-hmm.
like help
Yep.
disinfect your blood.
Sure.
So, yeah. So, anyways, Tammy actually is heading out on a work trip, and so she does need to get going so she can get packed up. And I kind of, Tammy, I'd like to just maybe get like your final thoughts on things, and then I think we can wrap this up. But do you have any last words before you head out?
No, not really. Thanks so much for joining us. It was very interesting, and yeah, really appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah,
All right.
my pleasure.
And to the rods out there, do you guys have any last thoughts before we wrap it up?
I'm
Dave,
going
you go
first.
first.
I called it. Dan, thank you for coming on. It was refreshing to chat and hear you speak about it, and also just chat and interact, and something about that's not secret societies ruining the world and running the world, and so yeah, it was refreshing to change it up, and yeah, very very informative as always, and looking forward to your stuff, and looking forward to you coming back.
Oh, likewise.
Noah, anything? Anything you want?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have too much to say. I'm kind of taken aback by a lot of it. It's not a subject that I know too much about. However, I feel like I know more now. There's definitely some things that I want to look into, like a lot of the symbolism and a lot of the, like the flower of life or the tree of life, and just kind of what those things mean. And I'm very interested in the tarot cards, not because I really find too much in it personally, but it is very interesting, like the symbolism involved, and I like how you explained it. Just from your perspective, I enjoyed this conversation. Yeah, I don't really know too much. Like I said, I'm kind of taken aback by a lot of the information here because I'm not too familiar with it. I think it's opened up a little bit of a rabbit hole for me to dive into. So thank you for coming on. It was nice getting to know you, and yeah, thank you.
Oh, likewise, Noah.
All right, Dan. Well, thanks so much for coming on and to speaking with our audience about all of your wealth of knowledge. It was so interesting to hear all the things that you were able to connect. And, it's interesting because we take these tidbits and kind of like, make our dot connections. And you've just added a whole bunch more to that. So I think that's pretty amazing. And I'd definitely love to have you back on to do a tarot reading sometime. I think that would be really fun. So can you just tell our audience once more who you are, like your name and where they can find you?
Yeah, okay. You were showing my like Twitter. It's probably not a good place because my like kind of nickname there is Shadow Band, right? Because I'm always stuck at about 1,700 like followers, and it's been like that for like I don't know, like a year or whatever, maybe a little bit less or something. But so definitely Shadow Band there. No, the best place. I mean, you have something on screen here, but there is a link from my Twitter. It's just basically you see my last name Fournier. Just do fournier.substack.com. And then you can access my articles, and there's a tab at the top for podcasts. So I mentioned a few guests. Of course, there was Dave, and there's Terry Wolf, and Sean Stone, and others. So you can always click on podcasts, and it has all the episodes. So that's probably the best place to just take a look at my work or my podcasts. And I don't post articles too often because they tend to be long and deep dives into things. There's a few short articles, like the first two at the top there. They're fairly short. There was the one Meet Canada's new Prime Minister Mark Carney, for example. That's like 6,000 words. That's pretty long. That I posted that the day he became Prime Minister. I had been working on that since like October or something, and so I posted that the day he became Prime Minister, and hopefully tomorrow he won't be. But anyway, I don't want to get into the predictions or anything like that.
Yeah.
So we'll try to
we'll just leave that one alone.
We'll leave that. We'll leave that one alone so as to not venture into those dark places. But
and we'll deal with it as it comes.
Exactly.
All right,
Whatever it is, it's God's will.
Yeah, that's right. Well, thanks to our audience for tuning in. If you like this episode, please be sure to follow us and share with your friends. And hope you all have a great day and or night. Bye, everyone.
Peace.
Bye.
So long.